Few places on Earth carry the weight of time the way Iran does. This is a land where civilization didn't just visit. It took root, grew, collapsed, and rose again, over and over, across 5,000 years of unbroken human story. Long before the name Iran ever existed, the Iranian plateau was already alive with people. As far back as 30,000 BC, a powerful civilization called Elam had taken shape in southwestern Iran, built around the ancient city of Susa. What made Elam remarkable was that it wasn't brought by conquerors or outsiders. It grew organically from the communities already living there, people who over centuries built city-states, developed their own writing systems, raised massive temples, and traded and clashed with the great Mesopotamian powers of Sumer and Babylon. For nearly 2,000 years, Elam held its ground as one of the dominant forces of the ancient world. But repeated Assyrian invasions, including the devastating sack of Susa around 646 BC, finally broke it. And with Elam's collapse, the stage was cleared for something even greater. During the first millennium BC, Indo-Iranian tribes migrated down from the Central Asian steppes onto the Iranian plateau. Among them were two groups whose destinies would shape the entire region, the Medes and the Persians. The Medes were first to consolidate power, uniting various tribes into the Median Kingdom in the 7th century BC. But it was the Persians who would ultimately rewrite history. In 550 BC, a man named Cyrus the Great defeated the Median king Astyages and brought the Iranian tribes together under his leadership. Then he kept going. His armies swept through Lydia in Anatolia, captured Babylon, and pushed eastward into Central Asia. In just a few decades, Cyrus had built something the world had never seen before. But what truly set Cyrus apart wasn't just the scale of his conquests, it was how he ruled after them. He allowed conquered peoples to keep their religions, their customs, their traditions. When Babylon fell in 539 BC, he released the exiled peoples, including the Jews, and permitted them to return home and rebuild their temples. This philosophy was recorded on the Cyrus cylinder, a clay artifact describing his policies of restoration and tolerance, which some modern scholars regard as one of the earliest expressions of human rights in recorded history. Under Cyrus and his successors, especially Darius I, the Achaemenid Empire became the largest empire the world had ever seen, stretching across approximately 5.5 million square kilometers at its peak. The Persians built the royal road, standardized taxation, organized their lands into provinces called satrapies, and raised the magnificent imperial capital of Persepolis, where delegations from Egypt, Greece, and India arrived to pay tribute. For nearly 2 centuries, this empire stood at the center of the known world. Then in 330 BC, Alexander the Great swept in from Macedonia, dismantled the empire in just 8 years, and burned Persepolis to the ground. After Alexander's death in 323 BC, his empire fractured among his generals. Persia passed to the Seleucid Empire, and for roughly a century, Greek language, cities, and culture spread across the region. But Iranian identity ran too deep to be replaced. By the mid-3rd century BC, a new Iranian power was quietly rising in the northeast. The Parthians, originally a nomadic people called Apani, began expanding from northeastern Iran around 247 BC under Arsaces I. Over the following century, they took control of the entire Iranian plateau and Mesopotamia, establishing themselves as Rome's most formidable eastern rival. They halted Roman expansion, controlled key segments of what would later become the Silk Road, and preserved Iranian traditions while absorbing influences from both east and west. Then in 224 AD, a Persian noble named Ardashir overthrew the last Parthian ruler and founded the Sasanian Empire. Under the Sasanians, Iran became a centralized and powerful state once again. Zoroastrianism was declared the official religion, and Persian art, architecture, and scholarship flourished. But the Sasanians were locked in centuries of grinding warfare with first Rome and then the Byzantine Empire. The final and most devastating conflict, from 602 to 628 AD, exhausted both empires completely. And into that exhaustion stepped a force neither power had anticipated. Beginning in the 630s, Muslim Arab armies advanced into Sasanian territory. In the decisive battles of Qadisiyah and Nahavand, the Persian military was broken. The last Sasanian king, Yazdegerd III, fled eastward and was killed in 651 AD. An empire that had ruled for over 4 centuries was gone. Iran was now part of the expanding Islamic world. Yet even as Islam gradually transformed the region's religious landscape, Persian culture refused to disappear. The Persian language survived, revived in a new form written in Arabic script, and Iranian scholars, poets, and scientists became central figures in what history remembers as the Islamic Golden Age. Over the following centuries, various dynasties rose and fell across Iran. Among the most significant were the Seljuks, a Turkic dynasty from the Central Asian steppes who had converted to Islam and risen to power in the 11th century by serving as military commanders for the weakening Abbasid Caliphate. Eventually, they assumed real authority themselves. Though Turkic by origin, they embraced Persian culture and governance, making Persian the language of administration, literature, and scholarship across their empire. It was a pattern that would repeat itself, conquerors arriving from outside, only to be absorbed into the deeper current of Iranian civilization. That pattern was tested to its absolute limit in the early 13th century when the Mongols arrived. Beginning in the 1220s, Mongol forces swept through Central Asia and into Iran with catastrophic speed, destroying entire cities and killing on a scale that left entire regions depopulated. And yet, even this did not permanently sever Iran's cultural continuity. By the mid-13th century, Hulagu Khan had established the Ilkhanate across the region, and over time the Mongol rulers underwent a transformation of their own. Many converted to Islam. They adopted Persian administrative systems, supported Persian scholars and artists, and gradually merged into the civilization they had conquered. The decisive turning point came in 1295 when Ghazan Khan converted to Islam and declared it the official religion of the Ilkhanate. But the Ilkhanate too eventually collapsed, fragmenting after 1335 into competing regional powers. Political chaos spread across Iran once again, until the late 14th century when Timur swept in from Central Asia. His campaigns were brutal, leaving devastation across many Iranian cities. Yet paradoxically, the Timurid period that followed became an era of remarkable cultural revival. Timur and his successors were generous patrons of Persian literature, architecture, and science, transforming cities like Samarkand and Herat into glittering centers of learning and artistry. Then in 1501, a moment arrived that permanently reshaped Iran's identity. A young leader named Ismail I founded the Safavid Empire and made a decision with consequences that echo to the present day. He declared Twelver-Shia Islam the official religion of the state. This sharply distinguished Iran from its sunny neighbors, most significantly the powerful Ottoman Empire. Even as this new religious framework took hold, Iranians fiercely preserved their ancient cultural heritage. That dual identity, Persian in culture, Shia in faith, became the defining character of modern Iran. The Safavid Golden Age reached its height under Shah Abbas I. The capital Isfahan was transformed into one of the most breathtaking cities of the early modern world, famous for its grand mosques, its sweeping public squares, and its thriving markets. Trade flourished, art and architecture reached extraordinary heights, and the foundations of modern Iranian identity were firmly laid. But by the early 18th century, Safavid power was eroding, worn down by internal corruption, economic difficulties, and mounting external pressures. Military genius Nader Shah briefly restored Iranian power in the mid-18th century, famously raiding Delhi and seizing the wealth of the Mughal Empire, but his empire collapsed soon after his death. The Qajar dynasty rose in the late 18th century, but by then a new threat had emerged: European imperial expansion. The Russian Empire pushed southward into the Caucasus while Britain extended its reach across southern Iran to protect its colonial interests in India. Iran was never formally colonized, but it was squeezed between competing powers, subjected to foreign concessions, political manipulation, and economic exploitation. The discovery of oil in the early 20th century made things worse, intensifying foreign interference to a degree that finally ignited popular fury. The constitutional revolution of 1906 forced the Shah to accept a constitution and a national parliament, offering Iranians, for the first time in their long history, the hope of government bound by law rather than royal whim. Britain and Russia, fearing a strong independent Iran, helped crush the movement. Instability continued until 1925, when a former military officer, Reza Shah, seized power and established the Pahlavi dynasty. Reza Shah drove modernization with remarkable force: railways, universities, a strengthened army, modern schools. In 1935, he officially renamed the country Iran, meaning land of the Aryans. But during World War II, his attempts to play European powers against each other, including perceived sympathy toward Nazi Germany, proved fatal to his reign. In 1941, British and Soviet forces invaded Iran, forced Reza Shah to abdicate, and installed his young son Mohammad Reza Pahlavi on the throne. The new Shah ruled under heavy foreign influence, and in 1951, a nationalist leader named Mohammad Mossadegh became prime minister and nationalized Iran's oil industry, wresting control from the British-owned Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. Britain responded with sanctions and a global boycott. When Mossadegh refused to yield, Britain turned to the CIA. In 1953, Operation Arjux overthrew Mossadegh and restored the Shah's authority. Mohammad Reza then ruled with significantly greater power, backed closely by the United States during the Cold War. American military aid poured in, and the Shah developed one of the most formidable military forces in the region. But he also built Savak, a feared secret police force used to silence political opposition. His White Revolution brought land reform, industrialization, and social change, but also disrupted traditional society, concentrated wealth among elites, and deepened inequality. Resentment built steadily across Iranian society. That resentment found its most powerful voice in Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, one of the Shah's most vocal critics, who had been exiled in 1964, first to Iraq and later to France. From abroad, he continued to reach Iranians, his speeches recorded and smuggled back into the country on cassette tapes. He framed the Shah as a tyrant serving American interests and called for an Islamic system grounded in justice and independence. By 1978, his message had become a revolution. Millions poured into the streets. The regime's attempts at suppression only deepened the crisis. On January 16, 1979, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi left Iran and never returned. On February 1, Khomeini landed in Tehran to a reception of millions. Within months, the monarchy was gone, and in April 1979, the Islamic Republic of Iran was established through national referendum. Iran's foreign policy transformed overnight. Under Khomeini, the country declared itself aligned with neither the United States nor the Soviet Union. Relations with Washington shattered after the Iran hostage crisis, beginning decades of deep hostility. Then, only a year after the revolution, Iraq's Saddam Hussein invaded. The Iran-Iraq War lasted 8 years, consumed enormous numbers of lives, and ended in 1988 without meaningful territorial change. After Khomeini's death in 1989, Ali Khamenei assumed leadership, maintaining a stance that was cautious but often confrontational toward the West. Iran engaged in selective diplomacy when it served national interests, most notably through the nuclear deal aimed at exchanging limits on its nuclear program for sanctions relief. But tensions never fully dissolved, particularly after the United States withdrew from that agreement in 2018. By the mid-2020s, relations between Iran and the United States remained strained, shaped by decades of mistrust, periodic confrontation, and the weight of everything that came before. Talks resumed toward the end of 2025, but the situation escalated once more following the death of Khamenei in 2026. 5,000 years. Invaded by Greeks, Arabs, and Mongols. Carved up by empires. Pressured by superpowers. And still, the language endures, the poetry endures, the identity endures. That is the story of Iran.